starting here. And it's a good discussion point to start at, because I think like one of the things that I want to do with this program is really break things down into the fundamental level, because I could just sit here and tell you about like my lived experiences, but I've lived my lived experiences, you haven't lived my experiences, right? So, you know, I'm sure some of you have seen the meme of like, or not the meme, I hate not everything has to be a meme, a picture of like the plane and it's been shot to bits, and usually it's talked about like survival, like bias and all that type of stuff. Like, I think it's the same thing for me. Like, I got lucky in particular ways that allowed for me to build a business in a particular set of ways. If I just said like, oh, these are things that work for me, it's because luck happened to make it go in that particular thing, right? So anyways, back to this, I could tell you what a founder is or an entrepreneur is, but I wanted to kind of like think about it a little bit with the rest of you, right? Is there a difference between being a founder and being an entrepreneur? And just kind of thoughts, like right off the bat, yes?
I think you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset if
Okay.
you want to found something big.
Okay. So like having an entrepreneurial mindset is part of it?
Yeah.
Part of being a founder?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
I think founder is the one who is mostly the initiator.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily they will be an entrepreneur or an employee at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Okay.
But our entrepreneur's goal is to how to make something done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like when I describe someone as being entrepreneurial, right, and this is like a French term, so it's not like as big, you know, break it down in English or whatever. But like, if I describe someone as entrepreneurial, what are words that come up? Like top of your head, scream it out. Say it out. Frugal. Scrappy. Risky. Okay.
Adventurous.
What is that?
Adventurous.
Adventurous. Yes. Yes, cliff jumpers. Okay. Very extreme. We're getting into extreme sports here. I like it. Snowboard people. Yeah, you guys gonna like it. Yeah. So I think that one of the things that we kind of hit upon, and maybe I'll like kind of center it, is entrepreneurial is maybe a way that you describe someone, and then founder is what you do, right? Like we're talking about, like founder being the person who starts something, right? And entrepreneurial is a way that you describe it. So, you know, I feel like there could be a founder who is not entrepreneurial, right? And there are founders who obviously are, right? Do you think that that's like to be a successful founder, do you have to be entrepreneurial?
If you are a CEO or something, if
Yes.
you are bringing science, you can only be a founder.
Sure.
You don't have to have the business acumen.
Mhm.
You have to bring something else.
That's another good point that you just brought up there. Does entrepreneurialness necessarily mean business acumen?
Yeah.
Do you think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think so? Let's double click on it. Why do you think that entrepreneurship means that you're business savvy?
No, I think it's not business savvy. It's
Okay.
just more of a kind of personality.
Mhm.
It is entrepreneurial. Like they think that I want to do so many things
Yeah.
in a day or this many hours. It's not necessarily they think in terms of business perspective that I can delegate tasks and get this thing done rather than doing it on my own. But they just have like all the skill sets that we discussed. They just have all the passion. It's not necessarily it's business related. Maybe it's just creative thinking and traveling like solo travelers and whatever, backpackers.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts in the room? Yeah.
What would the definition of business savvy be?
Business savvy. That's a good question. You guys kind of thought about it. Like, well, what would you say like a business savvy person is? Is it a successful person, or is it just a person who knows how to do it?
I think
Or what do you think?
Business sensitive.
Sensitive.
More sensitive on the business environment. Kind of like savvy, someone MBA or some of these
Okay.
all those terms, kind of like.
Yeah.
they kind of like.
All right.
Let's say someone who can turn an idea or a product into something that can potentially be scaled or bring revenue in or
Yeah.
be put to market.
Okay. Does that mean that they necessarily have to be technical? Like, do they kind of
No.
execute?
No.
Okay, so they don't have to. So that's a business savvy, and then there's maybe like technical savvy, right? So when we talk about that stuff, so when we say like entrepreneurial is business savvy, well, does that mean that also the technical savvy people can they be entrepreneurial? No. Oh, no, yeah.
Well, technically,
Yeah.
definitely, but I
Yeah.
don't know. But they don't have to be both,
No,
right?
sure.
They don't have to be technical and business.
So like maybe the thing that I'm getting at is like maybe someone who's entrepreneurial is someone who's more inclined to action, right? That they're doers, right? Whether, doesn't matter what they're necessarily doing, they're just getting ready to do it. And when you combine that with being a founder, it means taking the initiative to create something new, right? So just a little bit of a thought there to kind of just frame, right, how we talk about a lot of things, right? And, you know, just thinking about when someone talks about being an entrepreneur versus being a founder, like someone who is at Microsoft and has worked there for 20 years and they decide, oh, I've got this really great idea, and they're somehow able to convince Microsoft to create like an offshoot, I would consider that person to be entrepreneurial and really technically a founder of a business unit within a large company, right? So I think the way that I want to talk about it is like founders can come in many different forms. Entrepreneurial is just a way that we describe how some of those people do stuff, right? And to kind of broaden things, right? It's not just creating a business, but like in how you do things, right? Let's say, for example, like all of you are considered founders. You hire your first employee. They come up with a really great idea that adds an extra business unit to it. Would they be considered a founder?
Yeah, I rate myself founder.
Yeah.
I mean, my title is being the founder of the company. Yeah.
But if like your first employee, like if you hired someone, they're not equity, they're not an equity holder, or like maybe they're a minor because you have like an employee stock option pool, right? Where employees, but like they're not like 30, 25, blah blah blah, percentage, like major shareholder, right? But they created a whole new business line for you. Are they a founder in the business? Are they, what would you consider? Entrepreneur, yeah. So that's another thing there, right? What's the difference between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship?
Entrepreneurship within another business.
Entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is within the existing organization.
Right.
Entrepreneurship is outer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you can imagine a line full of ants.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur may be a founder, is the lead ant, and entrepreneur could be the followers within the ant, calling closely behind.
I like it. Yeah.
Microsoft example. So the example that you gave, Microsoft one, like someone pitching new idea within Microsoft. That's entrepreneur.
That would be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And so, do you think that it's advantageous for when you have like employees at some point in the future, fostering that, right? So great. So like, I think a lot of times we apply a lot of labels to different people, and sometimes labels can have power, right? And being able to add levels onto people, it allows for them to understand what they can be and what your values in your business are, right? If you do value entrepreneurship, like putting that up front and letting people know, like we value like being able to innovate and create new stuff, and like allowing for people to have that latitude, something that could be potentially powerful. And then like, yeah, there are potentially founders who may not be entrepreneurial, right? They're just really laser focused, like you're saying in science, like you're a scientist, your head's in the lab, they're just good at what they do and they're ready to execute, right? On what they do. And that could be the same for like salespeople. They're not going to innovate or create like a new like idea and stuff. They're just ready to sell whatever is put in front of them, right? But
It's very entrepreneurial.
I love it. I can't wait to hear it. But like, you know, but they can still be a founder because they're willing to take the risk to start something new, right? They're just not the person to necessarily be in that innovation. So, you know, I think it's a really good thing, like at a baseline level, to understand like founders, entrepreneurship. Like you also introduced entrepreneurship in. So awesome. Any additional points that anybody wanted to make on this?
Do I still feel like the entrepreneur is normally they have big companies and then they from founder and all the way to build their company become big and then they become an entrepreneur. But with the startup, well, we don't call myself entrepreneur.
What do you think? Why do you think that? Why wouldn't you?
Because it depends on the company, how big it is, right?
Okay.
And
So when we're talking about like the definition of like entrepreneurship, right? Like it's like being able to innovate and create things that are outside of the structure of the normal system, right? So does that necessarily matter with company size?
I may have my
No.
starts kind of like, well,
I'm just
at the
asking
beginning,
questions.
I said that entrepreneur, but
Yeah.
there are social stereotype or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of like, is it the entrepreneur entrepreneur, normally they are big
Mm.
and like on in the newspaper
Yeah.
or something like that. So
No,
that's why
yeah.
I kind of think like I'm not
Well,
sure.
especially with the people within this room. Does the news media or does YouTubers who say that they're entrepreneurs and all that type of stuff, like what society has created, how much does that affect what you do on a day-to-day basis?
It won't, but it will kind of like, well, if there are positive,
Mm-hmm. But that's all
whatever,
external, right?
it's
That's how someone
external,
else
right?
views you, right?
Yes.
So
And that will be
yeah.
as an image on the
Sure.
company, right?
image on your so that's external, and you really can't control that, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think of yourself and how you
Yeah,
think
I
about
mean-
like what your company does, what the people within your company, what they do?
Yeah, I mean, founder
Yeah.
can be entrepreneurial, but entrepreneur can be entrepreneurial. But when it says about a type of person
Mhm.
being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
or being a founder, I kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm right. But
No, no.
I'm not
No, I mean like we're open to all differing opinions here, right?
Mhm.
And so in your mind, right, that like entrepreneur maybe is someone a little bit more established,
Yes.
and maybe you consider it to be like the end result, or someone who's
yeah, maybe kind
Yeah,
of
like-
the result is more established,
Mm,
and founder will be more early stage.
okay.
That is what.
It's an interesting perspective, right? Because like then the descriptor moves to, you know, like a lifestyle almost that someone has, right? Like someone is a entrepreneurial, right? Is like the adjective form, and then entrepreneur is the way that they live their life, right? So maybe someone who's more further along and established, right? They might describe themselves in that way, right? And I think a term that's come up is like a serial founder, right? Is someone who starts a lot of businesses over time, right? And then there's also the term of like serial entrepreneur, right? Whether it is like you just have one company for the most part, but you continue to innovate and continue to live life in a particular way, right? Even if you've only had one company, right? You're not a serial founder. You haven't started a lot of businesses over and over again. Like, for example, like Bill Gates, he's only done Microsoft for years and years and years until he retired. You'd consider him an entrepreneur, maybe not or like a serial entrepreneur because he's just innovating constantly at Microsoft, but maybe not a serial founder, like a Elon or a Steve Jobs, or someone who's just starting companies over and over again. Like Steve Jobs, he got kicked out of Apple after starting it, created Next, and then he also co-founded Pixar, right? Like he is a serial founder because he's willing to take the leaps and do that, right? But a Jeff Bezos, right, who worked a cushy corporate job and decided to quit to sell books online, he's willing to take that risk, and he's just constantly innovating. He creates AWS within Amazon. He creates Amazon Food, partially by buying Whole Foods and other stuff. But he's very entrepreneurial in that way, right? And so I think you brought up a really great point, right? That like even established people, right? They may not be within the founder mindset in the early stage, but maybe there's something else there. Awesome. Great point. Awesome. Anything else? This is great, right? We're learning, we're getting a lot of different perspectives on things. And, I guess my kind of last parting shots here is like the titles that you create at the startup stage, right? Everyone, legally, you only need the CEO. Whatever else is whatever you're comfortable with. Founder is not a legal term, even though there's a lot of hubbub made, back in the day about that stuff. It's not a legal term. I'm like want to wave. It's all right, honestly. And like if it's affecting,
Okay with it down.
Yeah.
With it down.
yeah. So